the reverse gravity. Anyway, you guys can look those up. And while we're on about a little bit about movies and Kickstarter, the folks that made the fan-made short film Street Fighter Legacy are working on a new project called Street Fighter Assassin's Fist, which chronicles some of the Street Fighter classic lore about the fall of Gouken and the rise of Akuma and all that. It's a very big-budget, highly developed, hopefully over 2-hour monstrosity, so go help them out if you like well-done, faithful adaptations to Kingdom. Go help these guys out. They're not succeeding very well at present. They've been out about a week and only about $14,000-$15,000 out of their $630. And a confusing story, I'm not even sure how to report this one, because there's like 4 or 5 different places that I found this out about, and none of them seem to have the same story, so take this one with a grain of salt. But the latest Tomb Raider was released internationally. However, during a specific patch, the Japanese language version was taken out for whatever reason. So, Steam users found out an exploit over in Japan to let them play it anyway, which I think was just subtitles, but I'm not entirely sure. It kind of hinted that it was exactly this. So here's why the story is troubling and odd. Square Enix just released a big Japanese voiceover pack for the game for a whopping $30. Now, under normal circumstances, Japanese gamers are already used to paying the equivalent of $80 for an imported game like that anyway, because just like over here, translating everything into Japanese, hiring the voice actors and all that, that's a costly thing. So we actually get off a little better than they do. They just, anyway. So this isn't a big stretch to what they're used to. But if these conflicting reports on the story can be true in this case, this is the first time they got a really obvious shafting, because apparently there might have really been this full version of that was patched out just to make them repay for it.
Square Enix, you said?
Square Enix, I said. Imagine that.
Wonderful company.
Yeah. Slant Six Games, the folks who developed Raisins. Who developed Slant Six Games, the folks who developed Resident Evil, Operation Raccoon City, and Galactic Reign, has joined in on that game industry layoffs thing. However, they're trying something a little different. The need to lower the operation costs is important, so the layoffs are still taking place, but they're doing so in the hopes of reinstating everyone the moment funding for a new project gets greenlit. These guys seem to want to keep their team together as much as possible, because this is actually the third time it happened. Once after the completed SOCOM U.S. Navy SEALs Firestorm Bravo 3, which I think was the PSP, and then once again more recently just after the Resident Evil game that I just mentioned, which is also a mouthful. So, but despite this, not everybody was able to be hired back every time that they had to do this. So they're struggling, but unlike a lot of companies, they are trying to keep themselves together, which is kind of cool. But this is not at all the case for French developer Eden Games, the folks behind 2 Test Drive Unlimited games, and that really buggy alone in the... I'm not alone. I'm not alone in the dark, because I have a phone. Okay. Buggy Alone in the Dark reboot from a few years ago, which had some really interesting fire effects, but that's about the most people could say about it. Wow. But this isn't your typical studio shutdown. See, back in 2011, the entire team went on strike when they found out that the parent company of Atari was going to be firing over half of them, while Eden Games claimed that time after time, some new leader would come along, get rich despite the financial difficulties within the company, and then get replaced the moment their plans for recovery hit snags, and then the process repeated. I do not know how many of these leaders came along, but this is their words, not mine, that it was the teams like themselves who had to generally pay for it. Atari didn't negotiate with the strike, however, and for the last few years, Atari has marked the studio as having discontinued operations. See those little air quotes my fingers are doing? My flippers, whatever they are. So, after a year of limbo, the expected has happened, and Eden Games is closing its, well, what's left of its doors. And now that the server issues are finally calming down, Maxis has brought back Cheetah Speed to SimCity this week after a month of tweaks and fixes and other such technical nitpicks, as well as the announcement that it will be coming to Mac come June 11th. I was hoping to get a quote from Grover, but I don't think he can hear us from up there.
What is happening?
No. Spinning blades, a lot of noise.
And that steam engine, you know that's got to be poison. How can you keep to a lane and gain an enemy if they can hear you coming like that? I haven't figured that out. By the way, that whole thing is a reference to League of Legends. Just in case you didn't know. Yeah. EA, however, did indeed get named Worst Company of America for the second year in a row by the Consumerist, beating out even Bank of America. This didn't come as a surprise to EA, however, especially after the SimCity guffaw. But Peter Moore had made something of a pompous statement several days prior after they realized that they were having problems and they were vowing to do something better, but equally pointed out that the big things they've done lately, despite most of his bullet points easily being downplayed by anybody with a good grasp of the situation. So that was not one of the better moments of EA's highlights. But unrelated to either case, however, as a part of a streamlining process for the upcoming next-gen consoles, seriously, what is with this excuse? An undisclosed but significant amount of EA employees have been laid off. And what timing? Firing people for any reason just after a day after the Consumerist Award is probably a bad thing to do. And an interesting story in an interview by Game Industry International, Greg Zeshik, you might remember he's the co-founder of Bioware who left the company last year, having something interesting to say about next-gen systems. Quote, everyone's kind of holding out the hope for these new consoles, but honestly I don't think that they're going to be that big of a deal. I worry a lot that unless Microsoft or Sony pull something magical out of a hat, it's pretty much going to be the same old repackaged, and I don't think that's going to change the dynamic of the retail market, end quote. And I kind of paraphrase there because I read horribly. So while this is the longest console generation ever, I have to agree that there's just not enough new jumps in technology to make the new consoles feel like the leaps over prior consoles. Not to say that some of the stuff that we've been shown with these powerful new engines isn't fantastic or anything, but I mean even better than CGI in a lot of movies that I've seen lately. But is it really enough just for the graphics? There was a comment made by the Crytek guys that were claiming graphics are 60% of what makes a good game, and their excuse for this was the physics, and I actually have to agree. Good physics and good detail can make a game really over the top. Photorealism, I could care less. I mean, it's cool when it's there, but usually anytime they try to go the realistic route, it gets dated a couple years later. So that's why I'm not a big fan of it. When it works, that's cool, but it's always the more cartoony and artsy games that have a longer lifespan. So, don't forget though that the last jump was not so far from the same boat, but even then we had more going for it in that outing than this one. The PS2 in particular hung on for a long time after the PS3 and 360 came out. But when this Xbox 720 gets revealed next month, we'll be returning to this whole subject to discuss our thoughts in more detail. But that's for later. Meanwhile, 38 Studios has deliberation about their $70 million loan that ultimately bankrupted the company last year is squeezing back the news again, as Rhode Island lawyers are wanting to have the loan defaulted on a lawsuit against 38 Studios founder, the former Red Sox pitcher Curt Schilling. This will put the entirety of most of the lost money on the taxpayers. Doesn't it always? But State Representative Karen McBeth, who's part of the leading charge, argued that the insurance companies should be responsible for the bill because that's exactly what the companies are supposed to do. Funny, I hear that a lot from Ottawa Medical. So it's funny to hear that the government, for once, needing to fight for the insurance company money. Maybe something will change because of it, but I doubt it. Anyway, the alternate issue is that defaulting on the loan, according to EDC's Chief of Staff John Pagliarini, is that it will make financing future projects a lot harder and damage the state's bond rates, not bonding, state bond. Oh boy, here's an interesting one. But whereas that was an honest mistake by honest people, our next story involved one Angel Hamilton, or Zillion OP, a Twitch bearded paraplegic streamer who has streamed for 2 years of his gaming exploits. But one fateful moment on April 5th, his viewers got an eyeful when he apparently made a miraculous recovery as he nonchalantly said, "Be right back," and walked off from his wheelchair right on camera. Needless to say, there was a fan frenzy as many felt very played, but also that, like many Twitch streamers, he has a donation box as well as a Twitch partner paid subscriber base. Twitch quickly responded and banned Zillion and removed all of his videos and also closed his girlfriend's account for terms of service violation due to their fraud, because they were both in on it. To quote Twitch, the Twitch broadcaster Zillion OP did indeed have his channel closed and his partnership contract terminated on the basis of fraud. Moving forward, we will be offering refunds to those who subscribe to his channel through Twitch. We have zero tolerance for this type of behavior, and the character demonstrated in this situation is truly reprehensible. His actions are a huge slap in the face of the Twitch community members with real disabilities, such as Arion, sorry if I butchered your name, and groups such as Able Gamers, who have helped spread the message of inclusiveness and positivity not only to the Twitch community, but as gaming as a whole. Now, some have argued that the money people paid into him was for his streaming, not as a means for him as, like, pity money. But at the same time, if he was playing a character, I get that. There's a lot of people who play characters on YouTube. Matter of fact, I've thought about doing that with this show, but we ended up kind of being ourselves anyway. But I don't know. There is a point in time when you do have to realize that when you're getting conned, and how many people probably did give him money because of this con. So I do not disagree with what Twitch did here.
Yeah, just sounds like somebody that got caught. Yeah.
Ubisoft did some dealings this week, as it used to own 30% of German developer-related designs for a while, but now have completed a transaction to take the group as a whole. Grover would recognize these guys as the folks behind the Anno games that he loves, and will continue to work on the online browser MMO Might and Magic Heroes Online for Ubisoft that they've already been doing for a while, now that they're completely under their wing. And get ready for crossovers, as Sonic and Mega Man united this week in Archie Comics for Worlds Collide, as two famous blue mascots teamed up with their pals to battle against both Dr. Wily and Eggman, or Robotnik if you prefer, and a whole bunch of classic and new machinations from the two evil scientists.
I've got it on the coffee table. Just can't wait to read it.
Why didn't you read it already?
I forgot.
But the crossovers don't end there. Shonen Jump is celebrating 45 years of making manga and Japanese comics, if you will, and has been having all sorts of special stuff going on, like a line of toys to commemorate, to a crossover anime that aired last week, and a whole bunch of other more stuff, but not the least of which is J-Star's Victory. As a big fan of the Japan-only Nintendo DS Smash Brothers style Jump Superstars and Jump Ultimate Stars games, hearing this new title for PS4 and Vita brings out a bit of the anime geek in me, as a ton of manga characters will get together for a big brawl. However, this is less Smash Brothers this time and more, I don't know, Naruto Ultimate Ninja, or even Gundam Versus from the looks of the engine. And as it appears to be kind of a team-based 4-player battling thing. Not quite a fighting game, not quite a party game, not quite a third-person combat game. It's something in between. It's hard to tell at this point, but expect more news as this develops, even if the chances of seeing the light of day in the US is very slim thanks to all the franchising and licensing issues that these characters have. They've only mentioned 4 characters so far, but there's already a flyer that shows a couple of others that are very likely, if only in a format of like a helper summoning character. So this is going to be a big one. And as a last little note, while the disc-based Xbox 360 version of Minecraft is getting delayed to June 4th to make sure the game is absolutely updated to the latest content of the PC version, whatever that actually means, Microsoft also revealed this week that the downloadable 360 version of Minecraft alone has racked up over 1 billion hours of play. That is the equivalent of over 114,000 years. So, if that's that, can you imagine how much WoW is racked up by now? Oh yeah, and then there's this little magazine called Time that held a public poll that named Minecraft's creator Notch as the second most influential person in the world. And I can almost believe it.
Yeah.
So the only notable releases this week is the 3DS is getting more love from Atlas, as this is a long one. Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner's Soul Hackers comes out this week. At least that's what I understand. I've heard some other people saying that that's the Japanese release, so I'm confused. As does NetherRealm's big DC fighting game, Injustice Gods Among Us, where we will see if Mortal Kombat folks can make a the harsh but profitable fighting game scene with comic book characters. That's never been done before, right? And then there's also Pandora's Tower, a reuniting of the Jump, just talked about them a second ago, Jump Ultimate Stars creators Nintendo and Gambarian, and published by Xseed, as it's an action RPG for the Wii that will probably fly under a lot of radars, but I've heard the buzz from a lot of JRPG folks that they were ecstatic that this game was actually getting brought stateside, as it didn't seem like it was going to hit that way. But that is game news for April 13th, 2013.